we talked about an overview of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. What we'll do next then is to look at how do those behaviors actually show up in your team members that you're working with. And so as I walk through this, I'd like you to think about specific individuals on your team, the dynamics that are going on within the project team meetings and so forth. And I think you'll recognize a few of these behaviors, hopefully not in yourself, but in your project team members. So in absence of trust, what we talked about initially was that this has to do with an unwillingness to demonstrate vulnerability. In other words, what teams tend to behave like is they conceal weaknesses and mistakes. Now, why might they do that? Exactly. To admit that you don't know something, right? Not a good idea, not counter survival. To admit that you made a mistake, that maybe you were wrong. Exactly, just like you're saying. Not a good thing to do in some organizations. And so part of what I'm suggesting is that you need to relearn or unlearn some protective behaviors in order to be more approachable from a trust standpoint within a project team. So, unwillingness to be vulnerable, not asking for help. What's wrong with asking for help? Right, it looks like you don't know what you're talking about, or you don't have the answer. Guess what? You probably don't have all the answers, which is probably why you need a project team. Not asking, or not even being able to offer help as well. That's outside of, I don't trust you, that's outside of my scope. That's your problem. Holding grudges. How many people hold grudges, right? You've been on a project with somebody before, you have past history with them, etc. And so that whole trust thing carries forward into the next activity that you're involved in with each other. And why would you dread meetings? Yes, right. You don't even want to go to those meetings. You don't know those people. You don't like those people. You heard bad things about them, which you believe, etc. And so what other kinds of behaviors can you think of as you look at your project teams that you see engaging in absence of trust? Right. Good. Yes. Okay. Good. And so what I'd like you to do for a moment is to turn to the person next to you and maybe just share a couple of examples of where you've seen absence of trust happen on project teams. So let's just take a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, good. Welcome back. So then I'll take some examples from the audience about that. And then the key actually, what do you think the key is to overcoming and being able to build trust? Time. That's what many people say, that the key is time. I'm going to suggest that the key to building trust isn't time, it's courage. It's courage. So, these are some of the activities. If the shoe fits, or if you've seen it in your project teams, you know what I'm talking about. So, let's move then to fear of conflict and look at what are some of the kinds of behaviors that are demonstrated when people are in fear of conflict. So I'm saying boring meetings. Why might meetings be boring when people are afraid of conflict? Exactly. Nobody wants to say what's really on their mind, right? And so who's really putting the good stuff, the juicy stuff, the important stuff that the team really needs to know out on the table? Of course, this organization has no politics, I'm sure, and no one that engages in attacking or fight and flight kind of behavior when they're in a conflict mode. But the whole avoiding controversial topics, I call this harmony at all costs. This is often what you see some teams engage in when they're not engaging in attacking behavior. And so consequently, people aren't really rigorously discussing ideas, debating different approaches, and what the different problems might be on the project. And so what other kinds of behaviors can you think of that would be demonstrated in a team, or your team perhaps, when they are experiencing fear of conflict? Right, CYA behavior, okay, what else? Deflecting, like, oh, look over there, right? Okay, guarded, yes, veiled conversations, exactly. So these are some of the kinds of behaviors that fear of conflict can show up as. So again, if you would just take a moment, turn to the person next to you, and discuss a little bit about where you have seen fear of conflict on teams that you've been involved in.